I have done this show for 5 years, almost 5 years now, coming up this October. And the one thing that there's so many satisfying aspects of it, one of which when you put the time in, you put a lot of prep in your show and you do the show. And when I hit this little corner thing that says in stream and I sit back in my chair, the show's done and I feel like I did a good show, that's satisfying, right? You put the work in and you're rewarded for it. That's a satisfying thing. But close to it is when I have a take that I know 100% I am right on. We're just going to need more and more data to prove me correct. More and more folks are going to come to my side of the table as time goes on. And that is happening right in front of our very eyes right now with the Dallas Cowboys who fell to the Baltimore Ravens 28-25. Now, for the record, I picked Dallas to win this game. I thought this was going to be a strength on weakness type of game, and to varying degrees, on one side it definitely was, the other it sort of was, in the sense that Dallas can't stop the run, Baltimore's going to run it all over Dallas. Check. Baltimore Ravens rushed for 274 yards. Derrick Henry got $151 of that, and Jerry Jones said that the Cowboys couldn't afford Derrick Henry in free agency, which when you look at the cap situation Dallas, that is not correct. Anyways, on the Dallas side, I was like, well, Baltimore can't stop the pass, so this should be a Dak Prescott CeeDee Lamb game. Dak is going to have a big statistical output. Well, the second part of that was true. The first part was not. CeeDee Lamb was not good yesterday. But the thing that I have always said, at least going back to the 2022 season specifically, from then to now, and certainly now, is that we talk about the Dallas Cowboys every year, and what we're anticipating they do is this year that they forget a Super Bowl, finally get to an NFC championship game. We understand that. My thing has always been this for 2 straight years. We are not talking about the Dallas Cowboys. Forget as an NFC contender, forget as an NFC East division winner, if they don't have number 4 on their team. Did you see Micah Parsons yesterday? Can we see what Micah Parsons has done? All stats provided by our friends at StatMe's, all graphics provided by my man Alfred Parsons Jr. Can we see what Micah Parsons has done to start the season? He's tied for 49th in tackles for loss, 60th in sacks, and 137th in tackles. So Micah Parsons has done nothing. The Cowboys defense did virtually nothing yesterday, just like they did last week and the last time that they played at home before that in their playoff loss to the Green Bay Packers. Can we talk about the fact that up until the fourth quarter, Dallas's offensive line, particularly Guyton, God bless, on the left tackle, just got worked all night long, all afternoon long in Jerry World? Can we talk about the fact that the one wide receiver that Dak Prescott should be able to consistently rely upon, CeeDee Lamb? Well, first half, Dallas put together a good drive, and Dak's got it going, and offensive line, looks okay. The play calling's good. Dak hits CeeDee Lamb in a slant, bam, punch out. It might have been the kid. I think it was Nate Wiggins, the kid they drafted of the Baltimore Ravens this year in the first round. Just punches it right out of CeeDee's hands. That's minimum 3 points off the board for the Cowboys in a game that they lost by 3. Think that was a big play. You also consider the fact that CeeDee Lamb had multiple drops in this game. The fact that, oddly enough, or close to halftime in this game, after Dak and CeeDee had set the Cowboys up in a field goal range, CeeDee is going ballistic on Dak. Dak, you can't read his lips. You don't see what he's saying in the camera shot by Fox. Turns to CeeDee. He's like, hey, bro, chill. I can imagine that's what he's saying, and we'll show you a Dak soundbite once I get to RJ later in the show. But in this game, Dak was the only positive. By the way, I forgot to mention the Dallas Cowboys rushed for 51 yards on 16 carries. Fun fact, only Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb, neither of which are running backs, are the only 2 players in the Cowboys to average 4 more yards per carry. And they almost beat the Baltimore Ravens yesterday, because that's the type of quarterback Dak Prescott is. If you give him just an ounce of help, an ounce of protection, which they weren't giving him through 3 quarters, they did in the 4th quarter. If somebody can come close to separating, Dak Prescott, who in the 4th quarter, we could show you his numbers here, was unbelievable. In the 4th quarter alone, 187 passing yards, 3 total touchdowns, 1 on the ground, 2 through the air. Completion percentage, not great, just a touch over 50%, but didn't turn the ball over, not just in the 4th quarter, but throughout the course of the game. And in the 4th quarter, he had a passer rating over 100. Dak Prescott, ladies and gentlemen, as well as, by the way, a muffed onside kick by Baltimore, is the only reason that the Cowboys were in this game. I mean, from start to finish. And this is the issue with Dallas that I've talked about for years. Is when we talk about them, they're one of the most talented rosters In the National Football League, Jerry Jones, he says this every gosh darn training camp. This is the most talented roster I do believe that we have with the Dallas Cowboys going into this season. I do believe that this reminds me of these 95 Cowboys teams. No, they're not. They're not close. Those teams were stacked with Hall of Famers. And by the way, in the previous two, had a Hall of Fame level coach. Respect to McCarthy, but he is nowhere near Jimmy Johnson. That is the understatement of the day. This is the Cowboys offensive line that is average with Zach Martin, who's going to be a Hall of Famer. This is the Cowboys wide receiving core that you saw yesterday. Once CeeDee Lamb, in some regards, looked almost mentally checked out by the fourth quarter, Dak's having to go to Jalen Tolbert and Kavontae Turpin, who's a darn kick returner, and Jake Ferguson, who's a solid tight end. I actually like Ferguson, but he's nothing special. Making all of these guys work. Brandon Cooks made a couple plays off the arm of Dak Prescott. This was, if you have any questions, if you're a Cowboys fan, should we have paid Dak? I think yesterday, despite the loss, is a prime example. Of course, you should have paid Dak Prescott the biggest contract in NFL history because that's what the market dictated that he should get. When you consider the fact, and I've said this for years, Jerry Jones is a bad roster constructor. He has been bailed out by two, I think, criminally underrated quarterbacks in Tony Romo and Dak Prescott, both of which he lucked into. Romo was undrafted. Dak went in the fourth round. It's not like they were seeking out these guys. No. This was, in the case of Romo, Bill Parcells and Sean Payton developing him. In the case of Dak, for Jason Garrett's faults, he's pretty good with quarterbacks, helped develop Dak Prescott into being the player that he is today. Dallas does not have a good O-line. It's middle of the road to below average. Their receiving core outside of CeeDee Lamb is awful. The running game, non-existent, by the way, just like it was a year ago. And the defense, somehow, some way, again, I guess going from Dan Quinn to Mike Zimmer is that much of a downgrade, even though I think Zimmer's not a bad defensive coordinator. The defense is abysmal. It's bad, particularly stopping the run. Again, Derrick Henry. In this game, 25 carries, $151, and a couple touchdowns. Lamar Jackson himself, by the way, 87 yards on the ground himself. Lamar, by the way, he only threw 15 passes for what it's worth, but completed 80% of his passes. So, and by the way, I'm still not terribly high on the Ravens. I think this is a team that, if you look at their recent history going back to 2020, most blown 7 or more point lead. Baltimore Ravens have blown more 7-point plus point leads than any team in the NFL going back to 2020. So 7 or more, they got that lead. It is not a done deal. Baltimore Ravens kind of have a history of blowing leads like that, and they almost did yesterday. I mean, I think if Lamar does not complete that pass on 3rd down and 6, Dak gets the ball and probably goes for the win. Like that, it was a gigantic play, and props to Lamar Jackson for making it. But this is, I mean, did that not look like the classic Dallas Cowboys loss to a team that we all consider, I'm lower on Baltimore than most, but a team we all consider to be good to really good. Some really believe they're elite. I don't believe the Ravens are elite, but some do. Whatever. I can remember games against the Cardinals where this was the case with the Dallas Cowboys. The first playoff game, not the second, the first playoff game that Dak the Cowboys played against the 49ers at Jerry World. I remember it. It was Dak made one mistake. He threw a pick in that game. Dak, by himself, with bad line play and receivers who couldn't separate, kept them in it. That's what great quarterbacks do. They give you an opportunity, just give them just a little bit of help, a little bit of support, be it a run game, be it protection, being receivers, that can separate on a consistent basis. And they'll give you a shot every single time. You look at the Cowboys today, you look at their flaws, be it the head coach, who for reasons I can't comprehend, probably because he A, has no feel for the game, B, clearly does not rely on analytics at all. I always say you should use analytics. They shouldn't just drive every decision you make, but you should use them, is the fact that the Cowboys, time after time after time, continuously run the ball on 1st down, despite the fact that the Ravens knew it was coming every single time, despite the fact that Dallas does have no running game. They can't stop the run. They can't run it. They can't pass protect consistently, and they can't separate consistently, and you want me to believe that's Dak's fault. And there's a part of me watching that game that got frustrated with Dak, not because of his play, because Dak was excellent yesterday, is the fact that, Dak, you didn't have to sign that extension, buddy. Like, you could have, there's a lot of other franchises would have paid you this. An unserious GM, a coach who's fine. I like McCarthy. I've never loved McCarthy. And a roster that is not good. It's not Mike. When's the last time he said, "Oh, what a play by Micah Parsons"? So watching that Dallas Cowboys, and listen, credit to Baltimore for establishing the run early, and that first drive was a clinic, an absolute clinic by Todd Monken and that Ravens offensive coaching staff. Unbelievable, and props to Lamar. But watching that game yesterday is just yet more validation. And if you look at the media, more folks are starting to come to my side that, man, if they didn't have Dak, this team is like a 5-win team. Like they are like really bad. Jerry Jones does not make many good decisions. The one good one he made was signing Dak to that extension. Because if we're not for that quarterback number 4, no turnovers, 3 touchdowns, almost 400 yards passing, cutting the lead to 3 with 3 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. If not for that guy, they're cooked. They are in the running for the number 1 pick in the draft. I don't think they're as bad as the Carolina yesterday, notwithstanding, or some of these rebuilding teams, out there in the National Football League. They're not quite as bad as those teams. CeeDee Lamb can certainly be elite on a every other game basis in certain spurts. Micah Parsons, depends on the afternoon. But just watching that, if you had no preconceived idea of what the Cowboys were ahead of time, if you never watched a Cowboys game in your life and you watch that, you're like, damn, the quarterback's awesome. Everybody else is just not cutting it. So let's think for Dallas right now, this is a disastrous situation to be in, and they're just not a very good football team. That their quarterback is keeping afloat, and for the record, I still think they're going to win the NFC East because I don't trust Philadelphia, in large part because of their coach and their quarterback's bad decision making. So listen, for Dallas, rough game for them, but this was the Dak Prescott just gave us a shot to win it game when almost everybody else across the board delivered at best D+ performances. Shout out to Dak Prescott, because that was absolute clinic he put on with almost nothing to work with. But alas, falls short in the end because the other team is more talented than you, better coached than you, and just has better organizational structure. And that's the state right now of the Dallas Cowboys. RJ Ochoa will stop by in 15 minutes to discuss this further with me. But again, with Dallas, I never bought into this as a contender before the season, throughout the offseason. And Jerry Jones, ultimate gaslighter, says they're going to go all in. They don't go all in. They lose multiple players. Is asked by the media, hey, you think it would have been a good idea to sign Derrick Henry, who lives in the Dallas area and wanted to be a Cowboy? Oh, we couldn't afford him. BS. The Cowboys, prior to signing CD and Dak, were dead last in the NFL in terms of cash spent on their football team. Jerry's a cheap owner. Jerry's a gaslighting owner. And Jerry's a bad general manager. Full stop. He's a objectively bad general manager. Have you seen the Cowboys' last couple drafts? Have you seen them? They haven't been very good. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube, and be sure to go click that big red subscribe button and check out the other clips and full shows from Carving It Up Live, as well as our other incredible content creators here on the Grid Network.